the new imperialism in Asia. We have covered Africa. We saw Africa get pretty divvied up. We have seen Bismarck step in. We saw Jules Ferry step in. We saw everyone really get a say with the Africans. And now we're going to talk about what happens in Asia. So Britain has India. We know that. We're going to talk about India in just a little bit. And India is going to be the jewel of its crown, and not specifically for this reason, but it is one of the reasons. They are able to grow opium in India, and then they're going, it comes from the poppy seed plant, if you did not know that. And they're going to take the opium that they grow then in their jewel of the crown, India, and they're going to sell it to China. There's been some situations where we haven't talked a lot about China because they've isolated themselves really from the rest of the world. Chinese goods, we have seen, have become very popular across the course of this history course going into Europe. But we have not really seen Europeans go out into China. And so, of course, our new industrialists, who are producing way more than they can sell to the current European population, is looking for something that they can sell in China to get some of that money back out of their treasury. Remember, the last thing they want is for China to be taking all of the gold and silver and putting it in their treasury without getting any of it back in return. So they need China to start importing some stuff. And what they lean on is going to be opium. It will become illegal to sell opium in China after 1729 because of some of the things we're going to talk about today, just for the obvious reasons as well. I mean, just look at those guys chilling there. It's not a very productive drug. I don't really know the effects other than like neurologically speaking. I have read that it is similar to the reaction one has to heroin, so a very lethargic kind of state. So I don't have a context for that either. So I'm just going to say, like, it makes you not want to work and be productive, which is very counterintuitive, but counterintuitive to the culture in China at this time. What? Like Funyuns? Like eating Funyuns makes you... Oh. I haven't had Funyuns since I was like in middle school. I didn't even know they still made Funyuns. Alright, but they're still there. So China had been isolated, like I said. Now the Europeans, who've been buying porcelain, who've been buying all of these things from China, want something to take back over there, and so opium's going to be what they lean for. So Britain is going to come into China. There'll be two wars. They'll both be called the Opium Wars together here as a result of the selling of opium here. So Opium Wars with Britain. The first Opium War is 1839 to 1841. Letter A right there. Britain is actually going to occupy several coast cities and force China to surrender. In your reading, does anybody remember what the first Opium War was called in your reading packet? It was not called Opium War. No, they weren't called the Chinese at this point. It would have been. And it will be the Huns in a little bit. It's going to be the Sino-British War. Okay, so that's how it was. In the reading, your reading packet, that's what McKay calls it. And so by 1848, really the cause of this war is that China, or the Chinese, are importing 40,000 chests of opium a year. If you don't know how much opium's in a chest, it is 133 pounds. So if you want to do that mathletes here, yeah, I don't even know what the dosage of opium is. That's sounds like a lot to me. 133 pounds in one crate. It was 57% of China's total imports. Yeah, it's a huge crate, and it's yeah, and so they're hoping to stop this. Really what it is, as Matt mentioned, the Manchurians are really keeping their power by their relationship with the British, and a lot of Chinese people are then going to be very upset about this. So we have the first Opium War, 1839 to 1841. You'll see it as the Sino-British War if you were doing your reading. It will be the Treaty of Nanking that is going to end it in 1842. It's pretty obvious who's been winning all around the world this time, who has the empire that the sun never sets on. Britain, they're winning. They win here as well. They are going to raise the Union Jack over Hong Kong in 1841, and in 1842, Hong Kong will officially go to Britain. They were supposed to hold it forever, but I think they have a little twinge of guilt, and would you like to explain what happened in 1997? Go for it. I feel like the mic should be closer. Beautiful synopsis. Yeah, so, by the way, beautiful synopsis. Yes! Look at that! We could have a map, we could have all kinds of stuff. I love it. Really all I had to add to that is Steven just shot me here. I had, in the course of this, it was kind of like the Americans, there were 20,000 crates of opium destroyed, burned, so kind of like the tea in the harbor thing. So the British just have a problem with the people they're trying to stand over, just getting rid of goods. And so they will also get 4 treaty ports when they get Hong Kong. And they're pretty much going to be like, so you don't want to buy this stuff? We're going to force you to buy it. So we're going to open treaty ports, and you have to trade just with us. British residents in China were granted extraterritoriality, meaning they were immune from Chinese law. So that would be like if we, let's say, Mexican immigrants came here, but yet they only had to follow the laws of Mexico and not the laws here in this nation. That would be that kind. So they give extra privileges to the British individuals who are going to be living there. This is going to be the same stuff. So this angers the Chinese even more. They're going to have the Second Opium War, 1856 to 1860, and again, Britain's going to be victorious. We're going to pause. Behind the poster, there is a hole that Matt's been chipping away with a spoon the whole semester. Oh, that's a weird place for like the recording to pick up. Oh well. So Second Opium War, same thing, caused by the same distrust, the distrust with the British. China will be forced to open 6 more ports to British and French trade indefinitely, and forced to accept trade and investment on unfavorable terms. So not only will there be a war against the British here, we're going to see an internal rebellion. Remember, just like we saw with Russia, when you were kind of losing with the rest of the world, your home front gets pretty bad. And so we're going to see the Taiping Rebellion of 1850. Things start to get bad within China. So it's the Qing dynasty, I would believe, would be the correct Chinese pronunciation right now for Qing. It changes. It's changed twice since I've been teaching. But it was primarily caused by differing Chinese factions. So Matt, from his research paper, knew we have the Manchus, and then we have the Han. And the Han majority group is going to start an uprising. As many as 20 million people will perish in this uprising. So we had 10 million people in the Congo gone and thought that was bad. We have 20 million here. They were upset at the relationship with Britain at the time, and the leader of their rebellion is actually going to be exposed to Christian missionaries that had come into China, and he's going to be, I talked about this revivalism of Christianity. He is going to be convinced that through whatever story or background that he is the brother of Jesus, and so just as Jesus was sent to save the people of Earth, he is sent to save the people of China from the Manchus and from the British. And so he is going to go at it from that angle there. And the Manchus will defeat the rebellion after 14 years. So 14 years, 20 million people dead. But they have to have the help of the British military to win. So this even keeps that relationship between the Manchus become dependent on the British at this time, which doesn't help the overall cause of our Opium War struggle. And so here's just a illustration, 20 million dead, Manchus defeated with Britain's help. Forgot to change my slide there. And that will bring us up to spheres of influence. So yeah, pretty much the visuals. Yeah, Miss Goopy, I've have gone down and watched her a couple times during this unit. It's a lot of fun. But the spheres of influence, as far as it relates to us, by the late 19th century, most of eastern China had become subject to domination by Britain, France, Russia, Japan, and Germany. Japan is going to gain Taiwan as a result of the Sino-Japanese War in 1894 to 95. So again, Sino being Chinese. And so we're going to see Japan even coming to the stage. We're going to see then all Europeans start pushing themselves into China. And we're going to see, just like we had the carving up the pie of Africa, we're going to see the carving up now. Not so much by taking over, but taking spheres of influence, like ports and things like that. Are you okay? You have random outbursts in class. I never know if I should be worried or if it's just some good fun. Okay. 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 So we see where Matt will be going. They start carving up China. You can read everything that's taken there, everything that's going on. What happens, what you've probably been exposed, is who's left out at this time, who was not, and who's a world power at this time that was not on our list of Britain, France, Russia, Japan, and Germany. China, but it's being carved up. Italy's still like, woo, we're really young to the game. No. The U.S. Yeah, go us. We're growing right now. What have we been... Yeah, I know, right? We're like supposed to... Yeah, I know, but we can mention us now because what have we been conquering while the rest of the world has been conquering Asia and Africa?
Oh, this has been the big state policy, right? No, this has been
this is manifest destiny. So this is us, like with our continent, and now we're starting to look at the rest of the world and go, hey, I'd like to be a player in that game. Like I would like to be on this forefront. And so the U.S. is going to start to demand an open door policy. You should remember this from U.S. history, to trade with China, resulting in an agreement that the imperialistic powers in China would not interfere in any treaty port or the interest of another power. No, it was the several ports that the British held, the French held, so there were all these spheres of influence, but you could only trade with the British at this port between British, so there was these monopolies in each area. And so we're going to say, hey, I want to play. And I really think the only reason they allowed us, because it wasn't quite beneficial, is that they realized we are a growing world power and they would like to incorporate our money, our capital, our goods into this whole sphere. Right now we're still pretty young. We're up and coming. We definitely will not see our match until we see the British and French with World War I. Mm-hmm. We find our dominance by kind of holding out and yeah. When did Canada? Okay, so we have cleared with the Treaty of Paris. We have pretty much cleared the French and Spanish, and so have British, so right around that time period. But then the independence, of course, the crown is still going to be holding. And so, with actual independence, I don't know Canadian history very well. Yeah, they're not. They're still under the crown. Queen Victoria, or the Queen Elizabeth is still on their money. So. Yeah. So I mean, it's a principality, right? Still, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say freedom, but I also. Yeah, we're cool. Yeah, we're gonna hold it, and they still really are. I mean, if you watch the Canadian Parliament, it's very similar. I mean, it's structured in the same way. Which I got the chance while I was in Vermont this summer to work very closely, and they watched the Canadian Parliament every morning. It's hilarious. It's almost as funny as the British part. Yeah, they go at it. Yeah, kind of crazy. So where do we go now? Let's go to India, where all of the opium was grown. India was the jewel of the British crown. What does that mean? Or it was the jewel of the British crown of the British Empire. It means it was the most valuable. It has the most worth to Britain at this time. The Mughal Empire, controlled by Muslims, fell apart in the 17th century, and after the 7 Years' War, the British East India Company, I put it in bold there for you, this actually begins to be an imperialistic move by a company. That would be like if Walmart took over.
They own like half of it.
Yeah. So it was like a company. So you would think of like, then its employees were running the nation, but there weren't enough employees of the East India Company to run it, and so they're going to have to hire sepoy militants or military, which are natives that then are led by a white general. And we're going to start to see some problems come in here. Robert Clive is going to be our military post runner. But it's a business thing, and so what they do is they operate like a business. They're like, we'll hire you. There's not enough employees, but you have to answer to this white guy. The sepoys, however, since they're native, are Hindu and they are Muslim. They are not Christian. There's evangelism going on at this time. Thank you. And so they are trying to also do that God, glory, gold kind of thing and impose Christianity. The British are anyway upon the on the Indians. So they're Hindu and Muslim. They are feeling very pressured to get rid of anything of their heritage. The British are coming at it very from the angle of like, we are better, we are white, jingoism, Christianity is better. Sati, which is the practice of burning the body on the funeral pyre, practiced by Hindus, and the widow will then throw herself on the funeral pyre with her husband. So, like, in one way, you could look at a very romantic gesture. Truly, the British look at it as barbaric and old-fashioned, and so they outlaw it. They try to impose their culture upon them. They also outlaw child marriage. So that's very looking in on someone else and saying, I am better than you because of my culture. Child marriage isn't something I do. It's not something Christians do. It's not something you should do. It's like that guy that moved to Southern California, and he was from South America, and he and his friend had, it was a couple years ago, it was in the news. They had done a wager, he'd done some work for him, or there was some form of payment. I think it was as bad as it was like a case of beer or something like that. But the exchange rate for that, whatever, was his young daughter to be off into marriage. But this was a custom. I mean, this is young child marriage and arranged marriages and a dowry were still parts of this culture. And it was this huge uprising. It's just like when you're not acknowledging someone's culture for what it is because it's not normal to yours. But the British didn't just not acknowledge it. They tried to kill it. They tried to smash it. And so really the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 to 1858 is going to start all over a gun. Okay, in 1853 we get the Enfield rifle. It changes from a musket or the musket ball that would like then go out to a rifling. And so you would then like bite the cartridge. I think I might have a picture. Did I put it here? No, I didn't. But that you bite the cartridge, but this cartridge is sealed with animal fat. And so each time you're biting on it, what are Hindus and Muslims not to ingest? Yeah. So for pork and beef. So they see it as a very like literal slight of my culture that you are trying. So what happens? Does anyone know in the Hindu or Muslim faith what happens to you if you ingest pork or cow? Beef. What's the number one form of punishment? I mean, like, the first thing that happens, yeah, that would suck for you later, but, yeah, you are going to be shunned by your family. It's almost like interacting with with an untouchable. In the caste system, you would be shunned, you would be unclean, you would be unfit. And so what these soldiers feel then is you are trying to separate me from my culture and family. You are trying to make it to where my only friends, it could be you British generals. You're trying to isolate me from my culture. And this starts a whole big uprising. It's going to be a Sepoy Mutiny. It's an insurrection of Hindu and Muslim soldiers. So it's not just these cartridges. It's like the final straw that's pulled for them. You're trying to, the final straw. The Sepoys have resented British taking direct control. Result, after 1858, the British Parliament is like, whoa, East India Company, you are not handling things all well. They step in to take over India and will administer India by a tiny all-white civil service. There will be British reforms in India, and so this is where we get, Stephen asked, do I have to say that imperialism is bad? I don't always think that imperialism is bad. I think that sometimes it's exaggerated the help you're giving to others, but in India, the reforms brought by the English Parliament are pretty substantial. They're going to do economic development, irrigation projects, railroads. I mean, you couldn't get connected to anything in India up to this time, and then they will build 25,000 miles of railroad. Cotton industry will become the fourth largest in the world. The tea trade, development of plantations, the creation of a unified and powerful state. And the number one thing that they did for India, and it's still significant today, is they taught them the language. They taught them English, and with English ideas became, yeah, and cricket. Lagan, best movie ever. Lagan. I love that movie. If we have time with our time at the end of the year after, we'll put that, because you guys get to rank the order in which you'd like to watch the history movies. But I totally support Lagan, where they challenge the British to a cricket game in order to not pay the tax, or they have to pay double. So good. Yeah, it's Bollywood all the way. But what was I going to say? Oh, but with the English ideas comes, or with the English language comes English ideas, like enlightenment, like I should be free, like should you be over me, like I should have independence. And it's these things that will cause those independence movements that you studied so thoroughly in world history with Miss Goopy. Okay? Other British colonies in Asia: Burma, Malay, North Borneo, which will be Indonesia. And so I think I didn't make slides for these because they're so small. France is going to have Indochina, modern-day Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Germany is going to control the islands of Samoa in the South Pacific, so very little. Remember, they're late to the game. The United States will be involved in the Spanish-American War and defeat Spain at this time. And this is where we will take possession of the Philippines, Guam, Hawaii. I put in this list, but it isn't from that. It's Happy Dole pineapple farmers that get Hawaii. And Cuba, and also Puerto Rico, that we still, of course, have today. Responses to Western imperialism in Asia. So, the Boxer Rebellion is going to happen in China in 1900. It is a nationalist, patriotic uprising by Chinese nationalists against Western domination. So this is one of the effects or responses to imperialism. Trying to get rid of white people really is what you could write to the side. This is a response to trying to get the white people out. They call it the Boxer Rebellion because have you ever seen someone practice Tai Chi? Because I think sometimes in the movie it's like where you you take control of the chi and it's like boom and everyone like falls down and like the chi. Yes. I'm right. And refocus the energy. Yeah. So these, yeah. Angela's chi wants to go this way. She's pretty obviously chiing this way. But the Westerners, Matt, were not as evolved as you, and they thought it looked like boxing, and so they called it the Boxer Rebellion. It really translates to mean harmonious fist group, though. So, I mean, I guess that could be a fancy way for saying boxing. Harmonious fist group. The Manchu dynasty would soon fall as a result of this, is why you need to know it. And Dr. Sun Yat-sen, a revolutionary, sought to overthrow the Manchu dynasty and establish a republic. And he sparked the beginning of a Chinese nationalist movement. And we'll catch up. We won't cover in great detail, but we are going to hit on some extra stuff this year we didn't last year. Because of the way the AP test is changing. You guys are in an interim year, so we'll get to see all of that. So we're seeing nationalist movements continuing. By 1911, we'll have a republic, but then the communists are going to come in. It'll be communist versus republic, and we know who wins there. Or we'll have some communism coming up. In Japan, it's the only Asian country not taken over by a European power. And that's because they pretty quickly realized, like, ooh, that's not going well for the people that are fighting back. I did get a stand on the little military arsenals that Commodore Matthew Perry built in the Tokyo Canal, or the arsenals, I guess they built expecting his return. He was like, "I will return if you don't do this." Kind of threatened. It scared them how far that he got in, but Matthew Perry from the United States forces Japan to open trade in 1853 in the Tokyo harbor. And what happens is Japan realizes, A, we need to modernize. They realized it like Russia did, but the thing that they do that's different is they modernize, but they allow these influences to come in. Unlike China, Japan quickly modernized and became an imperial power by late 19th century. Circle number 2. You need to know that they just handle it differently, which is going to make our outcome differently here. They're the only major Asian power to resist being swallowed up by imperialists. This is going to bring them out of feudalism. This is the time period of The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. It brings them out of this ancient feudalism they've been kind of lingering in. If you remember the Russo-Japanese War, everyone was like, oh, Russians versus Japanese, like, you don't even have to watch this war. It's, of course, going to be the white people that win. And we know, on the other hand, that the Japanese win. And so they modernize. They're successful. They're going to be successful in all of these. And it's ended with the Treaty of Portsmouth. That's a city in New Hampshire, if you were wondering. And it will be mediated by United States President Theodore Roosevelt. Long-term impact of that war, why we're even talking about it other than we need to know the reaction in Asia to European insult, is the long-term impact. Russia is going to go, oh crap, they weren't as easy to beat as I thought, and they turn their attention towards the Balkans. Who else has their eyes on the Balkans? OVB always said it'd be some damn crazy thing in the Balkans. Who else were? Ottomans. And who else? The Austrians. Okay, so all of this attention on the Balkans is going to lead us into World War I. It will also lead to the Russian Revolution, which is going to be important. We're getting ready to see the Romanovs go bye-bye. Japan, I will only get to talk about Rasputin for one day more. And his crazy fanaticism, his monkish showing. The revolt of Asia in the 20th century. Asians are going to hope to emulate Japan power and win their independence. So all of these are effects. Remember, AP Euro white guys love effects. They love turning points and effects. So that would be a good little happy list for you. I'm just going to really quickly tell you there were some opponents of imperialism. Not everyone was so happy with it. Not everyone thought it was a grand old idea. Karl Marx in his Das Kapital, 1867. Remember, he dies in 1883. He said the last stage before the proletariat rises up is imperialism. So it's not that he wasn't a fan of it in so much as he was like, this is the final thing. Imperialism is all about capitalists and about the haves making money off the have-nots, etc. So he feels this is the thing that's going to drive the proletariat to rise up. It drove to some rebellions, but it did not make the workers unite, that's for sure. J.A. Hobson was the most prominent of anti-imperialism theorists. He instated that all imperialist powers were bad, and you can kind of read through there. If you were asked to recognize two people that were opponents of imperialism, or asked to create an essay, an FRQ, on proponents of imperialism, like social Darwinism, the Spencer, and things like that, these would be two great that you could group together in opponents of imperialism. You don't hear a lot about those. So that's it. I made it under my 30-minute mark. That was my goal for today, with a phone call with Stephen's excellent Hong Kong lecture. We are there. That is all for imperialism. If you look at the back of your packet, I have included a chart for you. Don't forget that you can still be following along in that isms chart. I hope you took it out of your Unit 6 to study. But I have given you all the list of European colonies gained in this time period and what country they went to. So quick, this might help you with your maps if you're not there yet. Let's look at our essay questions really quickly. This subunit is a low probability area, which is why we go through it so fast. The AP Euro white guys really think you've had it enough, and in the last 10 years, only one question has come from imperialism. I tried to base my test according to AP standards and what might come up. I don't see it being a big issue on this AP exam, so I probably won't focus your essay towards imperialism. Because you're strong in it anyway. But anyway, compare and contrast new imperialism of the late 19th and early 20th centuries with old imperialism. You would be comparing total takeover to like trade stops. right? There would be some really cool contrast with China, what happened with China and Britain to earlier imperialism. There's all kinds of fun stuff you could do with this. If it shows up on the AP exam, I apologize already for not making your FRQ, but I think I've done a good enough job comparing them that you would do all right. Analyze the causes of new imperialism between 1880. You could take God, Gold, and Glory and just transfer it to this time period. Evangelism, you could do industrialism, and you could do glory as nationalism. So just, I think that would be a really awesome, I worry about my front row, a really awesome way to compare them. Like you could start with the God, Gold, and Glory and then talk about it in the context of new imperialism. Analyze the methods that European imperial powers used to acquire colonies in Africa and Asia. So you would want the Berlin Conference, and you would want the spheres of influence, and you could compare those two. You have Belgium, Great Britain, France, Germany, and Italy to choose from. Belgium, like that was off the charts bad. So that would be an easy one to talk about. Great Britain set the example with Egypt as a protectorate. France, you could talk about with their involvement. That wouldn't be my first choice to talk about with imperialism. Germany and Italy, you would really just compare to how little influence they got to have. So, I think we've covered all of that in great detail. By the Ethiopians. I don't mean that in any offense to anyone who's Ethiopian. In fact,